Hi everybody, welcome back. Thanks for joining us for today's second session in the maturity of monitors. I'm Scott McQueenie. You may recognize me from last time. I've got somebody new riding shotgun with me today. He's not really new. He's been here for a while, but he's new to our webinar series. Hey, this is Maurice Perkins. Maurice, say hi everybody.
Hello everybody. My name is Maurice. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you along today, man. So this is a three-part series we're doing on monitors. We talked about the maturity of monitors, and just like the last time, we're going to be setting it up where you can view this content and you can send us in questions. In our first webinar, we talked a little bit about the maturity of monitors. The first level is reactive. Hey, a problem's detected and we go fix it. That's probably the way most of your technicians operate. They pop into Screen Connect, or hopefully they're starting to learn, you know what, I can do it through the computer management screen. Level 2 is when we're getting into auto remediation. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that today in an example that we have for internal monitors. Auto remediation was where, hey, the monitor detects something, lab tech runs a script, and we fix it. Boom, done. 99% of the time, you don't even have to have a technician involved in that scenario. Level 3 is kind of a pie in the sky vision that I have, that I think it doesn't happen very often. But if you can get to a situation where you are able to detect what the problem is before it happens, then you can monitor for that and remediate to proactively even prevent the failure. I mean, that'd be a perfect world where I was able to prevent a failure before it even happened. So today we're talking about the second in our series of monitors. We're talking about internal monitors. I'm going to flip it over to Maurice so he can talk to you guys a little bit about what are internal monitors. What do you got for us?
Well, internal monitors are going to be your monitors that are operated from the LabTech server through SQL statements and database queries. So as you can see from the image displayed, those agent devices that we're managing are submitting their data to the LabTech server. It is from this data that is submitted that the internal monitor is weighted against. So say, for instance, you have an agent server power off unexpectedly. Well, clearly that agent software that's running is not going to be able to check into the server. By using an internal monitor, you're going to be able to see, which watches the database. You're going to be able to see the entries of the last communication, and you're going to be able to tell if that server is offline.
Okay, that's a perfect example of that.
So the information that's submitted, those queries are going to be based off a schedule, and that schedule is going to be pushed to the agent by the template from the group. Those schedules are going to be your desktops, laptops, and your servers' schedules.
So those schedules control how often the data is getting sent from each agent to show up into the LabTech database?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So for example, if we were to take a look at our internal monitor of the auto services stopped, leveraged with the desktop's schedule. You can see in our image here, if we look at the desktop schedule, you can see the service, and that service inventory is going to run every day at 6 a.m. and it's going to repeat every hour. So at 6 a.m., basically, it's going to start sending that information over. Then, if we were to look at the configuration of the auto services stopped monitor, we can see that the interval and the next runtime are in line with each other and they're working together. So the two components of the internal monitor and the schedule are working in unison with each other.
Okay.
However, if we change the schedule to repeat every 2 hours, then that frequency with which the monitor runs makes it so that every other hour that information is being run against the internal monitor. That's going to be outdated.
Okay, so if I'm working with an internal monitor, I just need to take a look at the schedule to make sure that the schedule is sending it on a frequency that aligns with my monitor.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, let's see if we can take a look at that in the control center real quick. All right, here I am in the control center. I'm going to go up into admin, and when we expand templates, I'll pick some template. The example that we had on our slide there, we had desktops, laptops, servers. I think the one from the auto services stop monitor was desktops. So here's my desktops template. on the Schedules tab, you can see I have the desktop's schedule being called by this template. If I edit this one, now we can see what Maurice was talking about. I can see how often information like my services are being sent. So where is my services? The third from the bottom. Okay, so look at my desktops here one right now. Right now, this one's set to be sending service data every 2 hours. So that was actually the red example from that previous slide, the do it wrong example. We left it configured this way on purpose so we could use that as a training exercise, obviously. So this is where your schedules live. This is where you're going to have an opportunity to analyze, well, do I want to change that schedule and have it send data more often, or do I need to change how frequently the monitor is running? One thing to keep in mind anytime you're looking at changing that schedule is that it's going to impact every computer that uses that schedule.
Exactly.
So you start getting a lot more data. You want to just use caution to determine, is that really necessary? Do I want it that often for every desktop if I was changing this desktop schedule? All right, so let's cancel out of here. We're going to pop back in, and what we want to talk about is when is the right time to use an internal monitor. Let's see if I can successfully navigate this here. So that would be a no. We're going to try this way. So how do I choose when to use an internal monitor? These are some questions that we want to talk about. When the item that's being monitored is not critically time sensitive. So if you look at that frequency for the schedule, well, the schedule can only send stuff as frequently as once an hour. I can't have a scenario where I've got critical web services on a web server and the web services are down for an hour. That's not going to work, right? If I've got a client who has a web server that I'm managing and it hosts a web page that's critical to their business, I certainly can have that down for an hour or more before I have any alert being sent to me. So that would not be an effective use of an internal monitor. That's when you want to call a remote monitor. Remote monitor is going to be the topic of our third in this webinar series about monitoring. So we've covered the basics and maturity in the first one. Today, in our second one, we're covering internal monitors. When we get to the third one, that's when we're talking about remote monitors. And remote monitors are exactly what you want to use for something that is critically time sensitive. They have much more of a hair trigger, so I can monitor something that I can't afford to have down for very long at all. That would be something like web services, SQL services, an Exchange server, something like that. You can monitor those with a remote monitor. So for an internal monitor, when do I want to use an internal monitor? Well, not for something that's critically time sensitive. And then another advantage that internal monitors have over remote monitors is I can monitor on more than one condition with an internal monitor. What you're going to see when we go into our example next here is I can monitor for something, like that's the core item that I'm monitoring for in my monitor. And then I have additional conditions that I can apply to that to look for something else and this and that or that. I have multiple things I can look at within an internal monitor. So that's another time when it's beneficial to choose an internal monitor, is when I need to have the ability to monitor on more than one factor. We're going to take a look at creating an internal monitor. And the easiest way that we recommend to create an internal monitor is to make a copy of an existing one.
Now, Scott, is it better to make a copy than to create a brand new monitor from scratch?
Well, thanks for asking that, Maurice. My answer to that is really tied to my choice of words in my description about making an internal monitor. It's the easiest way is to make a copy. You certainly have the ability to create a new monitor, and there's an option that's literally called Start Fresh. Using the Start Fresh option requires a significant amount of knowledge about the LabTech database. So you have to know which table you want to work with, which field within the table contains the data you're looking for. You have to know within that table and within that field, what is the type of data and the range of results I get so that I know how to make a monitor to effectively monitor for that. It's certainly something that can be done. It's probably outside of the scope of the level of this webinar series. It's a little bit more advanced. Absolutely, I can build a monitor from scratch, but I have to have a significant amount of knowledge of the LabTech database to do that. That's why we like to say the easiest way to make a new internal one is to make a copy of an existing one. After I make a copy, I can change it all up to make it do something completely different from what the original one that I'm starting from, the one I'm making a copy of. I can make the one monitor I'm creating do something completely different, but it's easier because I don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of the fields are already populated for you when I start from a copy. That's why we like to advocate doing it that way. It's just an easier way to start. Again, the way I do it, right-click on a monitor, copy monitor. Pretty straightforward. Notice when you do make a copy, look at what happens to the name of it. They all start with copy of. So immediately upon making a copy of a monitor, it gets renamed copy of, and you got to go find it, and now you're going to want to double click on it and rename it. Make sure you rename it with something to indicate the purpose. I'm making an example that I'm going to talk about, and I've got a name in there that indicates the purpose. It should just be something that anyone who reads the name of this monitor can get a quick indication of what the intent of this monitor is. And we recommend sticking with a naming convention. Notice here in this list, I've got a bunch of monitors that start with DRV. That is a prefix that's built into LabTech monitors where I'm monitoring anything related to a drive. So when I made a new name for this one over here, first thing I did was I went to the beginning and chopped off copy of, and I kept DRV because this example that I have in the screen is where I'm making a monitor to monitor something related to the drive. You don't necessarily have to stick to our naming convention, although it's already in there and it would make it easier for you to find. But certainly, we recommend that you have some naming convention that you use so that when yourself or anybody goes to find a monitor, you're going to know where to look and they're going to be sortable, not just some random sentence that somebody put in the name. Because you might have 5 different technicians creating monitors and their brains might think of a slightly different way to name it, and now you're hunting and pecking all over the place. You can't find it. If you stick with the naming convention, the one we have in or one of your own creation, it's just going to be easier for you to find that monitor when you want to go deploy it or modify it, etc. So I've got a business case that I came up with that we can use for creating our own internal monitor. Let's say I have a client who relies on having a persistent mapped drive with the letter X. I need to make a monitor that says, let me find when the X drive is missing. This could be something simple. Here in our organization, we have a couple map drives that we all work off of. So you'll say to your colleagues, oh, go save it on the so-and-so drive. So we all expect it to be there, and then if it's not there, that's certainly something I need to monitor for. It could be more critical. It might be a server that is saving files or needs to access files that it accesses through a map drive. And that server not having access to that map drive could cause really inconvenient interruption in functionality. So let me make sure that I'm aware anytime I've got a computer where their X drive is missing.
So as you can see here in our example, we've opened up the computer management screen, and on the computer management screen, we have got that drive information from the agent. So it sent that information in and noticed that the drive is missing. Now, we don't actually remove the drive from the Drives tab. We actually just mark it in red if the drive is not available. So this drive is showing in red. It is our X drive. So that's the information that we're looking at here.
And what is it that allows me to see on the computer management screen that that drive is missing? Where's that data coming from?
That data is based off of that schedule that's sending that inventory.
Remember, it's the first thing we were talking about there. How often is the data getting sent? What is sending the data? Anything where the agent inventory is being sent to LabTech to be viewed on the computer management screen or stored in the database for an internal monitor to access, that's all being controlled by the schedule. So how does this computer know that I need to mark this drive in red? Is because it sent over its drive inventory and we could see, oh, this drive is not connected. Well, this drive used to be connected, hence LabTech reflects, mark this one as red, and that gives us the opportunity now to make a monitor off of that. So I started by picking some monitor and making a copy. Now you can see I have customized this monitor to do the things I'm looking for. Well, the first change I made, well, of course, I gave it a clever name, right? I chopped off copy of from the beginning, and I threw custom in here. That might make it easier when you're sorting through all the ones that have our naming convention. Well, if I see that, but then it's followed by custom, then I know it's one that we made in our organization. And then I tried to make the name of it intuitive. It's not real complicated to say X drive missing. I changed the frequency for how often I need this one to run. This is just the way my mind was working. I don't think I probably need to know more than once a day that this drive is missing. Again, if I'm trying to modify this frequency, I just need to remember to go back to that schedule and say, okay, how often are we sending drive information? Then I know how frequently I can monitor for it. If I want to run this, every hour, I'll just check on my schedule, find out if I'm getting drive information every hour. If not, I either need to monitor less frequently or change the schedule and tell it to send drive information more frequently. When you see right here in the check condition section, notice, Maurice, how that is really, well, that's all database stuff. It's talking about the table in the database. It's talking about what field in that table. So this is a drive monitor that I started with. It's looking at the drives table. A lot of these things are really self-evident when you are coming in here and taking the monitor that you made as a copy because you want to create your own. When you start clicking on those drop downs, in the field to check, that's really all the different fields or columns in your database. Now you're going to be able to see which ones are available. Oh, letter is available, perfect. So now I'm looking for the check condition where the drive letter I'm monitoring for equals X. So that is a monitor. Internal monitor that says drive letter equals X. Done. But the beauty of internal monitors is I have the ability to filter on, to monitor on additional criteria. That's where I can leverage the fact that really what Maurice was telling us is that internal monitors are database queries. So I can take the query and make an AND statement. When we look down here, we have a whole section called additional conditions. The fact that there are additional conditions is telling us that this monitor is already going to treat it like an AND statement in SQL. So in SQL, if we look at this check condition section, it's doing a query where I'm looking at the drives table. I'm looking for where the letter equals X. And the missing field in the drives table equals true. So now I have the ability to customize this monitor a step further, and I could put on many more AND statements. I can even put in complex SQL statements in here. Now my internal monitor has the ability to look for all the different criteria, not just the drive X, but where it's drive X and it's missing.
Now, Scott, I have a question there. So if you can put in any kind of SQL data that you want, additional SQL data, what happens if I were to put in bad SQL data?
What happens if you put bad SQL data in this internal monitor and you save it is the LabTech server spontaneously combusts and explodes, and I think will actually shift the Earth's axis a couple of degrees, and people will start flying off the planet because we won't be spinning fast enough or something like that. It's really bad. You don't want to do that.
Okay.
Another thing that happens is you're going to have a broken monitor. So I've got an example that we can show you about, oh, here's a monitor that got saved with bad SQL in it, and it's never going to work for you. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. And that's exactly what's going to happen. If you put bad SQL in here and you just save it, we're not doing any checking for you. This monitor doesn't check your SQL syntax before it saves it. If you tell it save it, it's going to let you save bad SQL. So after you've customized your monitor here on the configuration screen, you need to go to the Monitor Target tab.
And here on the Monitor Target tab, what you're looking for is to, one, make sure that you have a group, at least one group in here. Without a group being here listed on this Monitor Target tab, that makes the monitor a global monitor, meaning, in our example, we're going to map drives to all of our clients, every single machine in our LabTech, on our LabTech server.
That's not good.
That's not good. What we want is we have one client, our LabTech client, so we've added that group, the LabTech client, so that it maps the drives only for that client. So make sure on the Monitor Target tab that you have at least one group in there.
So I'm kind of explaining it to you in the order that we recommend you do it. Well, make your monitor for the stuff that you want. Now, choose who the monitor needs to run on. We don't want to run a monitor on everyone. I started this example by saying I've got a client who needs the X drive mapped. So let's limit it to one client, just like Maurice was talking about. And again, you're going to get tired of hearing us say this. Always make sure, especially anytime that you have put anything in the additional condition section, always make sure you come back here to this configuration screen and hit that build and view query button at the bottom. The reason we want you to do it after you've added this monitor target and said, I only want to monitor on this one group, Maurice, the reason we want you to do it there is because if I don't do it there and I let the monitor target still be everybody or a whole bunch of groups that don't have that X drive, well, then there's going to be hundreds of machines that show that they don't have the X drive because those clients probably don't use the X drive. So by using the monitor target, putting in the group we want, and then going back to the configuration tab and hitting build and view query, now I'm saying, let's test the monitor, but still only test it on the group that I know should have the X drive. If I've got bunk in my SQL, which happens almost every time I edit the SQL on an internal monitor myself, because I am not a DBA, not a SQL guru right over here.
Really?
I know, it's hard to believe, isn't it? But it's going to give me a big error. Wah, you have bad SQL. Your SQL foo is weak. And then I know I've got to go fix it. And if I don't have bad SQL in there, what it's going to do is going to take me right here to this screen. This is the Query Results tab, and that shows me the results. So what am I doing? Building this monitor and viewing the query. So I've said I'm looking for drives where the letter is X and the missing value is true. Look at that. That's the one we started off right in the very beginning, right? When we went and looked at a computer to say, this has the X drive missing, and it was a computer called Windows 08R2 that is at the LabTech client. Well, my build and view query results are showing me Windows 08R2 at the LabTech client. We know that we had accidental success, and the monitor is finding exactly what we were looking for. So after I've got my monitor configured, I've queried it and tested it successfully and saved it. What do you think I would do next?
Well, you want to set your alert template.
I'm going to make a script first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's fix this. We're trying to view this from the standpoint of auto remediation. Well, here you have on the screen the world's most simple script. I didn't Google the netx command to map a drive. I already knew that, of course. Who wouldn't know? You knew that.
I knew that.
We all knew that. Come on. This isn't a real script. This isn't a scripting webinar, but it's the most simplified example of run this command to map the drive. You would probably want to build some more logic into your script to say, hey, let's make sure that the map drive was present after we ran the command and maybe put some ticketing time against it. But I'm making a monitor. Let's script the remediation. After we script the remediation, how am I going to deliver that?
Through the alert template. And as you can see in our example, in the dashboard, under our alert templates, you can see all of our alert templates. Next to the number 1, that's going to be the alert template that we've created. That alert template is called map missing X drive. So we're going to select that template. We're going to go in, we're going to edit that template to use the script that Scott just created. So we're going to check that box next to script, and down in the third part, you can see we have a list of all of our scripts. So you check script, and then you're going to be able to select from all of our scripts, even the one that Scott created. So map missing X drive is in there as a script, and then when the monitor triggers, if it needs to alert, it's going to get this script, and it's going to automatically map that X drive. How about that remediation?
So it's an end-to-end solution. Try to monitor for this thing. I've tested my monitor works. I got the results of a computer that I knew was missing it, made a script. Now I'm tying that to an alert template to say, okay, if we see that monitor catches an X drive that's missing, run this script, and that script's going to try to restore it for us. Now, when Maurice made this alert template, because he's definitely the one who made it, he didn't put a comment on there because he wanted to point out to you guys that you should not do that. You should always put a comment on your alert templates when you create them, right, Maurice?
Absolutely.
It was definitely him that created that alert template. Absolutely. So we've got an end-to-end solution here. I've got a monitor that I've created by making a copy. I gave it a clever name. I've made the additional condition to test what I'm looking for. I tested that it was just the computer that I already knew had the condition present. We made the world's most simple script, and Maurice made an alert template. So we're going to deliver all this through a group because we always only deliver monitors at the group level. Then I've got a scalable solution. Let's not make my monitor call an alert template. Let's make my group call an alert template. That way I can have one monitor that gets applied on multiple groups. So all I'm doing is I'm going right here to the group. You can see right at the top of this screenshot is the drive monitor that I created, and all I'm going to do is enable it and call that alert template that was created. And my alert template calls my script. End-to-end solution I've delivered right here on this group. And if you remember the group we chose when we assigned it, what group were we assigning it to on the internal monitor on the monitor target tab?
That will be the allclients.labtech.
So it is a group that only contains the members of our client. I don't need anybody else who isn't supposed to have an X drive. I don't want the monitor to say, hey, you don't have an X drive, and I don't want the script to try to create an X drive on a computer that's not supposed to get it. So by having my monitor target tab limited to just that, that's who it's going to run against. Now I came to the group and I'm saying, let's enable this monitor. Let's call the alert template that we've created to automatically try to remediate for us. So the last part we think of when we're talking about internal monitors, that's when we're talking about customizing internal monitors. Before we do that, though, I want to pop back into the control center and kind of go through that creation process and look at the monitor we already have so you can see what we did here. I'm going to try to have more success than last time. All right, so now I'm back in the control center. Let me see if I can find my monitor. Well, all of our internal monitors, I can access them with this monitors button in the toolbar. I will go over to internal monitors. You can see I've got some in here where we've made a copy. So the way we're making them always is just right-click, copy monitor. As soon as you do that, it shows up in your list under copy. This list is by default sorted alphabetically on monitor name. So that's when you're going to want to go in there, double-click on it, remove copy of, give it a name that suits your purpose. That's what I did to create my new one. I will not save those changes so I can go and just show you the one that I worked up here. That's the one I created, custom, X drive missing. And that's all I did. I started with that copy. I changed my name to something that was useful. I changed that frequency to daily because I don't think I need to know more than once a day that my drive is missing. And literally, folks, I kind of wasn't kidding. I know you find it hard to believe. I kind of wasn't kidding that I'm not a SQL guru. So this part is just trial and error. Okay, I know I'm working on the drives table. For my example, I made a copy of a drive monitor because I knew I wanted to monitor something from the drives table. So let me just start with something it gives me a leg up. And I just clicked on here, and now in this drop down I can see the different fields that are available to me within the drives table. Oh, letter, okay, I'll work on letter, that'll work. And so I'm looking for where the drive letter equals X. That was pretty simple. You can see I've got other options, not equal, contain. If it's a value, I can do greater than, less than, and my results. And so in this results field, I just type the letter, or sometimes you're actually able to see a list of all available values in the database and pick the one you want. I just typed in my X, and then this part here for the additional condition is where I came in and I was experimenting with that missing field. I knew missing was a field in the database, Maurice, because when you came here to the field to check, oh, missing is a field, and that's how I knew. I'm flying off the radar here a little bit. Let me try this. And it might be loading slowly. It might not be loading and just trying to make me look bad. Hey, I don't need any help looking bad. I can do that all by myself. Okay, I think it's loading. So I was just trying to pull up the computer in question so you can see that's where I could see that it's missing. Oh, it's acting like it wants to do something for me now. So when I went to the computer, it's the one that we actually showed in the slide deck there. It was the computer that was Windows 08 R2 where the X drive was showing up in red. So I knew that LabTech knows when a drive is missing because of that. So I was trying to figure out within my internal monitor what was that missing status. So finally it loads for me. Let me go back over to the drives tab, and there you have it. That's the one we showed from the slide deck. That's the computer I know that has it missing. So when I was in my internal monitor, it made sense to me that I should be able to find something like missing, and this field drop down confirmed that for me. Sure enough, in the drives table, I've got a missing field that I'm able to work off of. So let me look for the drive letter equals X and missing equals, and I had to monkey around with true, false. I didn't know if it needed to be in quotes or wildcards. So that's part of the process. Tweak it until you get the results you're looking for. The way you get the results you're looking for, always, of course, is with the Build and View Query Results button. So after we had figured out what I needed to do with my monitor, I came and made sure I was running it on my one group. After I run it on that group, I come back and I test my query. Then I'm ready to go make my script. My script was the most simple one in the world. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Where did it go? Literally, that's all I did. One line, shell command, netuse, map the drive. Netuse X drive, here's a UNC path. Clearly another reason that this wouldn't work on any other client. They're not going to be able to access that UNC path. That's probably not a valid UNC path in their environment. So our script needs to only do that one thing. Do you want to talk us through where I'm going to go find the alert template we created, Maurice?
Yes. Well, we're going to go to the dashboard.
And if we want them there.
So if we want to look at our global alert templates, we're going to go to the dashboard. We're going to go to management and alert templates.
Apparently we're going to go there slowly, by the way, so bear with us. You can access alert templates in multiple places within the product, but I like to steer people to this location because this is really where they live. They're accessible from a monitor, they're accessible from a group, but where you can find all of the alert templates is in the dashboard under management and then on the alert templates tab.
Also keep in mind, anywhere you can select an alert template, you're also going to be able to edit an alert template and also create a new alert template. So you don't always have to come here to look at the global alert templates. You're always going to be able to edit or create a brand new one wherever you can select one.
So here is where we had created the missing X drive alert template. I'm actually going to edit it real quick and clean up and do the thing that we recommend that you always do. This alert template will map an X drive for the lab tech client. Just a quick comment. When I'm reading through alert templates, I can always see, okay, now I know exactly what that alert template is doing. And so if I go back to it, now I'm going to have a nifty little comment in there. We just recommend putting comments in there so anybody who's going and looking through your alert templates, oh, I don't want to use this one because it's just doing it for the one client, so that's not useful for me, etc. Now I can see what it's doing, and if I edit the alert, there we go.
So again, in our alert item settings, you have to put a check next to error in order for you to be able to access the scripts. If you were to uncheck that check next to scripts, go ahead and uncheck that. You'll see that the script section will gray out.
Can't call it script if I'm not telling it script.
Exactly. So you have to put a check next to error, and now my scripts are available. If you were to hit the drop down, you would see an entire list of all of our scripts that we have available.
And so this alert template is calling my script, the one that I created to map the drive. It's the alert template that I'm using just for this one thing, and that allows me to have an entire end-to-end solution. I'm able to create the monitor, look for what we want, assign it to only that one group, so I'm only monitoring machines at that client. Then we're able to make a script to fix it, deliver the script through this alert template, and what is my last step going to be after I deliver it through that alert template? I think I'm going to go assign it at the group. One little quirk about coming to these all client groups, you have to right click and choose edit group.
Or you can actually hold down shift, and this is the international symbol for holding down the shift key, and you can double click on that and it will actually open up the group. Just a little quick tip.
Some people don't offer that as a solution because they can never remember if it's shift or control, so you just don't say it. It's safer that way. But it's shift, so now we know. Once I'm in that group, again, I'm sticking just for the people, the computers at that client, because they're the only ones that need this particular X drive. You click on the computers tab, we go to internal monitors, and we're going to go find our monitor. There it is. Oh, it's currently enabled there, but look, it's currently set to default do nothing. Well, that's not going to do anybody good, is it? Let's go ahead and change it. I'm going to edit the settings. Let's see if we can find that alert template. Excuse me. Oh, look, now there's a comment in there. I love it when we have comments in there. And I got a little click happy. There it is. And I can't get to the save. There we go. I'm going to save my changes. Now the group that the monitor is running on has this monitor enabled, and I'm calling the alert template that we've created, which calls our script, and it'll fix it for us. All right, so let's pop back in. We've shown creating a monitor from scratch. We've shown how the templates are pulled in. Let's pop back over, and I'm going to talk about what if I was customizing a built-in internal monitor. What do I want to talk about for customizing? Because, you know, creating your own is useful in our example, but maybe there's one that's already in there and I just want to tweak it. So you might want to customize internal monitors, and we'll take a look at this, and we'll kind of, well, first, what are we starting off with here, Maurice?
Well, the first thing you want to do is always copy one of our monitors. If you want to make any changes, best practice is right-click on it and copy it. That way you're not modifying what we have out of the box. That way, if something happens to it, you don't have to worry about going to the Solution Center and re-downloading and waiting on that entire process. Copy the monitor, and then make your changes in the copy.
And, you know, that serves a couple of purposes. Maurice was talking about the Solution Center. If you don't make a copy and you just work off of the built-in one, well, you might not be any more of a SQL guru than I am. So you might spend hours on this thing. You finally get to doing what you want, and your colleague goes to the Solution Center, and they accidentally update a new version of that monitor, and it overwrites the one you've made your changes in. So that makes you go, curse you! Ah! And another benefit to always working out of the copy is, I'm not saying I would do this, but let's say you're working on an internal monitor and you messed with it so bad that you broke it and you couldn't fix it. I mean, it could happen. I wouldn't. But if you are only working off the copy, you can either go open the copy back up, go open the original back up and do a side-by-side comparison, try to see what you broke, or you can just delete your copy and make a new copy and start over.
Exactly.
That's another benefit to always working off of that copy. So when you work off of that copy after you're customizing it, please, again, make sure to rename it. As soon as you make that copy, of course, it always starts with copy of. So we don't want to do that. Let's delete the copy of from the beginning of the new name, and let's make sure we try to adhere to our existing naming convention. Again, the example we've been using is DRV for drive. Maybe you're going to make your own naming convention, but when you're customizing this one, adhere to your naming convention and indicate what you're doing. So maybe there's a built-in monitor, I think, that monitors for drive free space to be less than 2 gig. Maybe 2 gig is not the threshold you want. Maybe you want 10 gig. So you're going to customize it. So you're going to make the copy, rename it, chop copy of off the front, maybe put custom in there or something to indicate that it's one that you've modified. And that's where you're going to change the name to indicate I'm no longer monitoring for free space to be less than 2 gig, now I'm monitoring for less than 10.
And always test your changes. So you've made this copy of this monitor, you've renamed it, all right? And now we're working through this monitor. you set everything how you want it. Well, go ahead and test it and make sure that your monitor works. That way, when that monitor runs, you know exactly what's going to happen. You're expecting it. So if it detects anything, you're ready to go.
My dear friend Maurice had actually asked earlier what happened if I saved a monitor with bad SQL in it. I've got an example of that if I can put my hands on it really quick. So this is a monitor where I intentionally put bad SQL in it. I'm going to double click on it to open it right away. First thing you see, because every time you open an internal monitor, we land on the status tab. First thing you see is this red, monitor has been disabled. Reset this monitor to bring it back in service. What? What's that mean? Why all of a sudden am I a parrot? So if I come to my configuration tab, oh, Somebody put SQL bunk in there. I don't think that's valid SQL syntax. If they would have clicked on build and view query, huge, giant SQL error statement. That's why you click on build and view query. Even if you accidentally put your pointer in the additional conditions section and you don't type nothing, just click on build and view query so you know you don't have a busted monitor, because we don't tell you, we allow you to close it, and you end up with this. You've got a monitor that's not working. If you make your changes to a custom monitor or you create your own and you don't click on build and view query, you might end up with a busted monitor like this. So you leave with a false sense of security. You leave thinking, look at me. I made a monitor to monitor for this thing and it's going to take care of it because I rock. But really, it's not, because you got a busted monitor and you didn't know it if you don't click on build and view query results. We don't validate your query before saving the monitor. So it's incumbent upon you always, upon editing a monitor, even if you don't change additional conditions, you could still bunk up what you put in the check conditions part. So click on build and view query, make your changes. After you make changes, always build and view query again until you don't get that. And not just until you don't get that, but until you get the results that you're looking for. Let me pop back in. I'm obviously not negotiating this part very well. Oh, look at that. All right, one last point that we always like to make, and this was actually Maurice's idea when he and I were talking about this content for today's webinar. If I'm customizing a monitor, so going back to my example of if I've decided the drive free space less than 2 gig isn't the threshold I want to be more sensitive, I'm going to ramp that up by customizing and setting that threshold to be 10 gig. So just like we're talking about here, I'm going to make that copy. I'm going to change it to 10 gig. I'm going to test it. And then, well, what I want to do is make sure I disable the one that I started with. If I'm customizing by making a copy of an existing built-in monitor, I'll go take the custom one I'm creating, make sure it's assigned to the groups I want, make sure on the groups I'm running it, I have the alert templates that I want. And now let's go back and take the old monitor and disable it. I think we talked about how I could show disabling it, right? I
Absolutely.
didn't really test this before we got on, but we're going to wing it. I'm going to pick my monitor. The one I was just talking about is actually in here.
Drive space right there, yep. Your mouse is on it.
My mouse is on it.
Go down.
Right here.
There.
I knew where it was. Thank you. So I'm going to go into my Monitor Target tab, and here's an effective way to disable a monitor, if you will. First of all, use the LabTech double click to delete it from all these service plans that don't need to be running it anymore. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick some custom group of my own creation, and I'm going to run it on this group. This one maybe?
Yeah.
Sure, we'll go with that one. That's my custom group. I'm going to save it. Let me go see if I can find my custom group. Is this the one?
Yep. Well.
That doesn't appear to be the right
nope,
one.
Go and close that one, go expand custom.
Expand custom.
And go into 2015 workshop check.
There we go. Thanks for your help. So this is the group I just selected when I made the change within the original monitor. I will go find it here. That's the one. You can see it's enabled. See all these that are disabled. This one showed as enabled. Well, what is this one doing? It's already got my default alert template of default do nothing. So this is effectively disabling my monitor. Run it on some group. So we can't run it on no groups, because if I remove all the groups from the Monitor Target tab, I got a global monitor. So what you do is you target one group, maybe even a group that you know doesn't have any agents in it, and then you have an alert template set. Default do nothing does exactly what it sounds like. It's not going to run on anybody, so I have effectively rendered the built-in original monitor that I customized. I've rendered the original one ineffective. I've disabled it by assigning it here and telling it don't do anything. Okay, so we did have a question that came in from Harold in Lecanto. What he was talking about there is within an internal monitor, one of the tabs is the exclusions tab. Harold just wanted a little bit of information about how the exclusion tab works. Do you want to take that one, Maurice?
I'll take that one. So the exclusion tab has a couple different sections. It has first the biggest section that you'll see is going to be just a list of the machines that have been excluded from either one section, which is where you can disable that monitor from running on that machine, which is up in the top right-hand corner. So as you can see up in the right-hand corner where it says disable computers, if I right-click there and I can hover over client, then hover over location, I have the ability to select a computer there. All right, now I do have to add them individually. What I'm doing here is this keeps the monitor from actually running on that specific machine. So monitors running on all the machines in a group, but there's one machine in the group that I know the monitor is going to fail on. You know what? Instead of being notified or alerted or whatever about that machine, then I'm going to go ahead and add it to the disabled computer section. Now, below that section is going to be the script disable. So I have a monitor running and I have an auto fix script. What we always use in our LTCP as an example, our LTCP certification, as an example, we would say, hey, the boss's laptop, we want to monitor it. However, we don't want the auto fix script to run on his machine. We don't want it to reboot or anything like that. So what we do is right click, hover over to client, hover over location, and then we select his machine. That way the monitor runs and it alerts. However, it will not run the auto fix script. So the exclusions tab is a way for you to either exclude the entire monitor from running on that specific machine, or you just exclude the script from running on that machine.
Okay, now I've added a couple here to the script disable. How do I remove one of them?
Well, to remove, you can do the good old LabTech double click.
The LabTech double click. You probably always wondered, where's a piece of software where I double click to remove something? Because that makes sense, doesn't it? It's LabTech. So there's a couple other things I'd just like to add to what Maurice was describing there. A lot of times I might have an alert action, an alert template, for example. Maybe for this monitor, I've got an alert template that says, create a ticket, because really we kind of recommend for every single thing you're monitoring for, always make it a ticket. So maybe I've got an alert template that says, create a ticket and run the script to auto fix. So in Maurice's example, when I'm looking at the script disable window, I've got the one computer that's the boss's computer, and we don't want the auto fix script to run against that computer. So what we're going to do is we're going to say script disable. But if my alert template does also create a ticket, and again, we do recommend just always create a ticket for everything that you're monitoring.
Absolutely.
That way I still have some notification. Okay, so I don't want the script to reboot the boss's computer, so I'm going to put their computer in script disable. But if I have my alert template also generating a ticket, then I still get visibility to it. I know that one of my technicians needs to schedule that with the boss or something, so I can still try to fix it. And an example I've had with the disabled computer scenario, maybe the reason I keep getting some particular alert. I've had an example that I used with a partner one time where I've got a monitor that is triggering on something like high RAM usage. So this thing always seems to be using a lot of RAM. And it turns out we looked into the specs for that box, and it's maxed out on RAM. The box only supports 4 gig. It's got 4 gig in it. So they need to do less with that computer or get a more powerful computer for that application. And we tell the partner that, or in this case, our partner tells the client that, and lo and behold, oh, they don't feel like spending money on a new computer right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable this monitor on that computer, because we're just going to keep repeating that cycle if I don't. Hey, I don't want this monitor to keep telling me RAM usage on this computer. It's told me, I've told you, you've told me it's not in the budget to replace that computer right now. Good. Then I will stop getting alerted on that, so that way we can just stop spending time on it. So that's another scenario where I've found that disabled monitor or disabled computers is useful. I still want to monitor on the group that computer is a member of, so all the other computers are valid. But on this one, for whatever reason, just don't squawk at me. So thanks for asking that one, Harold. We certainly appreciate it. That's exactly the kind of thing that we're looking for what parts of internal monitors did we not necessarily touch on during the presentation that you need clarification on. I think I've got some more questions in here. Let's see if I can successfully navigate the tricky Alt-Tab configuration. Boom. Okay, there's Harold. All right, so we had another one from Carmi, Illinois. That's funny because one of our good friends and trainers, the tall guy, he's from Carmi, Illinois. So Ronnie asks, what's the benefit of having a group on the Monitor Target tab? Why wouldn't you want to make an internal monitor a global monitor? So I'll take that one if I can here, Ronnie. Let me pop back into my control center. So what this was talking about is if you go into an internal monitor and you come here to the monitor target tab, I promise I didn't actually know that this one was a global monitor when I opened it, but it looks like I did, so I feel like I look cool. Do I look cool? I think I look cool.
I think you look cool.
Thanks, man. See, I like this guy. So, sticking with the logic of somebody who wrote a piece of software when you double-click to remove something, when you're looking at this Monitor Target tab and there's nobody selected, what does nothing mean? It means it runs on everybody. So, that's very logical, right? A Monitor Target tab with no groups means run absolutely on every single computer. Good. So that's a global internal monitor. And so the question was, what's the benefit to using monitor target groups, putting specific groups in the monitor target tab as opposed to a global monitor? What we're always pushing for is to deliver your monitors in a way that is scalable. What you have the ability to do by delivering your monitor to separate groups is you can do multiple things with just one monitor. I don't have to create one monitor for this group and another monitor that looks almost exactly the same for a different group. I can have one monitor and then I control the behavior on the alerting side. So the reason we want to use specific groups on the Monitor Target tab rather than global is because that gives me flexibility. If I was making this a global monitor, then I have to say this is going to be a global monitor, and if I catch the problem, it does this. Okay, but then I can't do something different to monitor for the same problem with a different result because I've already got one monitor that says look for this thing and do this. So when I apply some groups, I'm going to use my service plans as an example. Let's see if I can get down here. I want to start with my service plans for Windows servers, which are in there. It's a list and it's scrolling. And I'm going to start with my Windows servers managed 24/7. That's the one we kind of always use as the gold standard. We typically expect that for your clients, when you're managing servers, those are the most important machines you're managing. For the managed 24/7 group, that's kind of going to be the everything under the sun you can do for them. So let's consider that the one that we want to use to deliver the most services. Maybe I'm going to have another one that is going to be for my workstations. And through this client, they said, you know what? Workstations aren't showstoppers. I can have a workstation have a problem, and it's not the end of the world. So I don't want to have a managed 8x7, 8x5, or managed 24x7 contract for my workstations. So now I have set this monitor up on the Monitor Target tab to deliver to two different groups. One of them is no contract, one of them is a managed 24/7. If I save that right now, then I go into my groups. That was Windows servers, managed 24/7. I'm going to be able to find that monitor under computers and internal monitors. I think the one I was in was AV software missing. Is that right, actually? Yes, it's AV software missing. And so right now, this one is set for, it's enabled, and we're going to create a ticket and raise an alert. I might even change that. I might even select an alert template to install AV. And I know I've got one in here. I promise I do. custom auto fix defrag restart AV install MS. So this is an alert template I have that if I edit the alerts, what's it doing? It's calling a script. What script is it calling? Install Microsoft Security Essentials. I'm delivering this one to my Managed 24/7 group because they're going to get everything I can possibly deliver to them in a remediation. So they're getting this alert template, which automatically installs AV, and that is being delivered to my managed group. If I look now at the workstation and I go to no contract, maybe what I'm going to do on that same exact monitor, well, look what it's already doing, creating a ticket and raising an alert. So that could give me an opportunity to reach out to my client and say, hey, this workstation over here doesn't have AV, so that's not very secure. You might want to consider getting antivirus installed on there. If you give me the go-ahead, I'll do it right now for this price. Or maybe you want to consider switching over to an all-inclusive plan, and then that sort of thing would be covered. By having my monitor configured with different monitor target groups in here, then I'm able to use one monitor to solve for both scenarios. If I didn't do it this way, I'd have to have one monitor that just said, raise the ticket and raise an alert for those workstations that aren't covered, and have a different monitor that is just for installing antivirus software. So a global monitor doesn't solve for that in that way. Doing it on one monitor with my group targets allows me to say, oh, I can solve for both with one monitor, but control it differently through my alerting. So Mitch from Augusta asks, if a monitor that I create, if I create my own monitor, will it get overwritten by the Solution Center updates? You want to take that one, Maurice?
I can take that one. So when you create a new monitor, we do not overwrite any of your created monitors, all right, via the Solution Center. So if you download updates from the Solution Center, we're not going to overwrite those. And when you do an upgrade, for example, maybe you're coming from LabTech 2013 to LabTech 10, we're also not going to overwrite your monitors that way either. There's a couple things that we look at in the background other than just the name. So just to keep that simple there's more than one place that we look other than name. So no, we're not going to overwrite anything that you get from the Solution Center or any updates.
And this question, when we're talking about if we created our own monitor like this, I think that ties into another one. So I might have skipped over this one. I might have got a little click happy with this. That ties into this question. The question that came from Indianapolis was, should we create an internal monitor by right-clicking and saying Start Fresh, or do we want to modify an out-of-the-box internal monitor? So this kind of ties back to that question Maurice was just talking about. If I create a monitor, and is it going to get updated when I go to the Solution Center and make updates? So the answer to this, should I create an internal monitor by right-clicking and starting fresh, or should I modify an out-of-the-box internal monitor? The answer to this is none of the above. What you want to do is you want to right-click on an out-of-the-box internal monitor and choose Copy Monitor. That copy is what's going to prevent the Solution Center overwrite that Maurice was talking about. When you make an object in LabTech, a monitor, a script, an alert template, these things get a unique identifier that's associated with it in the LabTech database. So that unique identifier helps the Solution Center to know, oh, that's not the one I was looking for. This is a different ID. I'm not going to overwrite it. So when you're starting from making a new monitor, yes, it's possible to right-click and say Start Fresh. It's also possible to reinvent the wheel, although I don't know what shape you would reinvent the wheel in. I really don't even know where that expression comes from. How could you reinvent the wheel? Maybe that's the point. Maybe you can't. What you can do is you can make a new monitor by right-clicking and saying Start Fresh, and it's just more complicated. It's absolutely very flexible, but you have to kind of piece it all together yourself. You have to know exactly where you're looking for the data in the database. You've got to get the syntax right in your check conditions, and you got to make sure you don't accidentally fat finger anything in the additional condition section. It works fine, but there's more room for error. That's why what we like to do is we tell them to go down the path of right-clicking and making a copy of an existing monitor, because we have so many internal monitors already in there. And when you can visually see, oh, this monitor is looking for something in the services table, and we're looking for the status of the service to be not running, and this stuff in the additional conditions, this logical, you kind of get it. So if I have one that's already in there and I know it works, I could just tweak it a little bit and make my own changes. And so working from that copy, make my changes, test the results I want, and then I'm going to be able to save that one and not have to worry about it getting overwritten when I started from a copy. So it's always a good practice there. Testing the results of the monitor, that ties into another question that we had in here. We've got a couple right here. Do you feel comfortable talking about what the reverse query does on an internal monitor?
Sure, I'll talk about the reverse query.
All
so
right.
the reverse query is basically the opposite of what you're looking for when you create your monitor or any of our out-of-box monitors. So let's say, for example, I want to find computers that have a specific process running. So I create that monitor with that process, and I'm looking for that specific process. I find those machines that are running that process. That's great. Now, what I want to do with that is I want to look for all the machines that do not have that process running. So I check that reverse query, and instead of getting the results of a list of machines that have that process running, I check the reverse query. That's going to give me the opposite, all the machines that do not have that process running.
So if you remember, what we tried to harp on when you're making any changes to the additional conditions section of the monitor is that you must remember to click on Build and View Query Results, because we don't do that for you. And that takes you to the last tab, which is the Query Results. We're using the term query a lot here. And this checkbox that we're talking about is reverse query. So that's all it is. The query is basically a select statement. Show me the machines that meet the criteria of they are running this process. Reverse the query, show me the machines that are not running this process. So it's that simple. We've got another one that is another checkbox within an internal monitor that we commonly get asked questions about. And so since it's another little one-off feature that is in there, people don't really know what it does, we've got this invert checkbox. Invert check means I've made a monitor to look for something. Invert check means I want to look for the opposite of that thing. Here's the way that finally got my brain to get it when I was trying to understand what invert check did and how to use it effectively. Let's say I'm making a monitor, an internal monitor, to look for a certain service to be started. I want the monitor to alert me when the service is stopped. Well, the machine is currently not down. Because if it's down, hopefully I'm fixing it, not goofing around trying to make a monitor. So the machine's currently not down. So I know here is the service that I got a ticket on for this machine yesterday. I'm going to go make a monitor. Maybe I'm right-clicking, making a copy of an existing monitor, and I'm going to say, in the services, I want to look for the service with this name where the state does not equal running. And the machine's currently not down. So I don't know if it works because I don't have the machine in that failure state. Well, I don't want to go kill the service because the service is going to cause an interruption, and that's going to aggravate the end user. So if I go to the machine in question, I'm looking for this service. I make the monitor where it says, if this service is not running, alert me. I run the monitor against a group that contains the machine in question. It doesn't return any results. Well, that's because the service is currently running on that machine. If I just put a check in the invert checkbox and run build and view query again, then I should see that machine showing up. Because what invert the check does is, if my monitor says, I want to see where this service is not running, what invert check is going to do is I want to see where this service is running. So the machine's currently not in a failure state. The service is currently running. So I'm checking for the service in question. the service is running on that machine, it's running against a group, the monitor is running against a group that contains that machine. Invert check should show me this machine. Good, I feel confident in it. I'll uncheck invert check, probably click on build and view query results again. The machine probably drops out because it's still, the service is still listed as running in there, so it's not in an alert state, and I have confidence that my check is working the way I wanted it to. Check for this thing, well, it's not in the alert state, but if I check for the opposite, if the opposite is true, then I'm confident that when I flip it back and uncheck invert check, that I will catch it if that thing does go into the error state. All right. Okay. I'm getting a little click happy again. Okay. We've got another one here that comes from Josh in Buffalo. On the alerting tab, I see that the script to run at the bottom of the monitor. So if you're in the internal monitor, you go to the alerting tab, there's a place for script to run. His question is, why would I not want to use that feature? Is there a situation where I could use that feature? And this ties into how am I delivering the alert action. You want to take this one or you want me to run with it?
Go ahead, you can run with it.
So on the alerting tab, I can call the script. This really ties back to my example from earlier when the question was, why do I want to specify certain groups on the monitor target tab rather than have a global monitor? Because that's not a scalable solution. So in this scenario, the question is, why don't I want to specify this script to run right at the monitor level? Well, we always are pushing for your remediation only to happen at the group level. Because once again, I have maintained the scalability of the delivery of this monitor. There might be a scenario for this one client. We have our built-in autofix script, and every time the autofix script runs to restart some service, we've got this one client who, that service being interrupted, interrupts a different application that has a dependency with the one where we're restarting the service. So what ends up happening every time we run our canned autofix action restart service remediation script, they end up with a hung application on their end. It's not that hard to fix. My technicians have gotten pretty savvy at it, and they're good lab techers, so they do it from the computer management screen, which makes us happy. But that's still not an effective solution. So what we ended up doing is we have to go to that particular client, and we take the monitor restart service script that's a built-in automation, auto-fix remediation script that comes with LabTech, and we take that script and we make a copy of it. We're not going to modify the original. Make a copy of it, and we add a line that says also restart this other service. And that's the one I'm talking about for that dependency application that always ends up hung after we bounce the first service. So we add a line to that script that says restart this service as well. Because we're good and diligent little scripters, we're going to add some logic in there to verify that those services have been restarted successfully. And now I can run that script for that client. The way we're going to do that is we're going to run a different alert template. So I might have one alert template that says the autofix action is to restart service. We do have a built-in autofix action called tilde autofix action restart service. And that might work for everybody. So I could use that alert template at the group level, maybe on one of my service plans I was talking about earlier. But then I could run the monitors separately for that one client, and I would make a new alert template for them. The new alert template calls that new autofix script that I was just describing, and what that one does is it restarts the originating service as well as that one dependency one that always ends up getting hung. So now when I deliver it at that client, they have their own remediation, and then for everybody else, or at some service plan, they can have the standard autofix action monitor restart service script that we apply to everybody. If I were using the script in the script to run field on the alerting tab of the monitor, I don't have that scalability. By being able to deliver it separately on two different groups and within the alert template itself, that's where I'm calling the script. Now I can handle the same situation differently for this client, separately from a specific service plan, and I don't have to tweak the monitor or make a copy of the monitor and run two separate monitors. One monitor, two different fixes, because I'm not calling the script specifically within the alert tab of the monitor itself. All right, I think that's all the canned questions we had from people who had already sent them in from the past couple weeks. So thanks everybody who sent one in to us. I hope we got you some useful answers. We're going to take a couple from the chat session right now. Thank you for that. What? Mm-hmm. I'm going to do the thing where I don't really move my lips and I kind of talk to, or read it out loud to myself. So bear with me for. What do you have to learn a single group and go to enable? Do nothing. Maurice, can you read that out to me?
So the question is, why do you have to set an alert to a single group and set it to enable do nothing? Can you just leave the alert disabled for that group?
Why do you have to set an alert on a single group to set it enable do nothing? Can't you just leave the alert disabled for that group? Okay, so there's a couple different pieces here. If I want the monitor not to be a global monitor, I need to run it on at least one group, and that might be where I say do nothing. So I don't know if that kind of answers that part of your question, but if I don't want it to be global, I'm setting it on some group, and I'm going to say do nothing. Can't you just leave the alert disabled for that group? Okay, yes, so, okay, I might have the monitor running on several groups, and I could not have it running at all on some other groups. So if I understand that part of the question correctly, I think what I could do there is, I've got the service, I want the monitor to run on a couple of my service plans, but not all of my service plans. So I can run it on these service plans with my desired alert template, but then I can leave it set to do nothing on the other groups and leave it set to disabled on the other groups with no consequence. So yes, absolutely you can do that. In the monitor target tab, specify a couple of groups. On those groups, go pick an alert template, and you can just leave it as disabled on the other groups, and it won't run, and that is absolutely a fine way to do it. Where can I review this recording? So after this is done, what we're going to do is we're going to take the presentation that you were watching right before we started the live Q&A, the one that we have had up there for a couple weeks. We're going to take that plus today's live Q&A. We're going to smush it all together with this crack production team we have here in the studio, and then we're going to put it up and publish it so you'll be able to see the recording of the presentation and then today's Q&A session. We're going to make that available to everybody who's attended, so you'll be able to come back and see, all right, here's the entire presentation and end. We'll have that up for you in just a little while. I think I got time for exactly one more question here. And Maurice is going to be kind enough to read it because I have old man eyes and that's too far away and too small.
So the question is, how can I monitor a process uptime? For example, if a process has been running for an hour, I'd like to run a script to kill it. Only thing I can find is monitoring process creation date. So basically he wants to monitor for a process's uptime.
Okay, do you happen to know off the top of your head if uptime is stored in the database?
I want to say that it's stored in a database.
All right, so one thing you're never supposed to do when you're presenting live is go looking for the answer when you don't already know it, but I'm not worried about all that. So I'm going to pop in right now and open up a computer, and I'm going to just see, do I have something in there when I go look at a process about uptime? These are internal monitors. Internal monitors are querying the database. If the process information about uptime is stored in the database, then yes, you can monitor for uptime with that. If it's not, then you probably end up having to come up with a different way to monitor that. If this loads on my screen sometime before next week, I will be able to take a look. Process, blah, blah, blah. Can I add any columns to this? It doesn't look like I can, so I don't appear to be getting uptime. Oh, creation date was mentioned in the question. They did mention they had the creation date, but not uptime. So at first glance, it doesn't look like this is something that could be done with an internal monitor. I know remote monitors have some flexibility, because with a remote monitor, I can monitor performance. I might be able to get a performance monitor to look for something like process uptime. If I have that flexibility with a performance monitor, then I can grab uptime, and then I certainly could kill that with a script. I don't see where that is a value we're currently getting in the database, so I couldn't monitor for that with an internal monitor at this time. So it might have to be a case where we get a remote monitor, and if there's a performance monitor that will pull in uptime, then I can certainly do exactly like you're talking about, call a script to kill it. Okay, there are a few more questions that we haven't been able to get to. We've run out of time for our Q&A session today. So like we promised, what we're going to do after today's session is Maurice and I are going to divvy up the list of questions that we didn't get to. We'll compile the answers and get them back to you guys. And you will be able to view this presentation in its entirety. You'll be able to see the entire demonstration portion that you watched right before this today and today's live Q&A. We'll have that edited and published up there for you guys in a little while. So look out for something from us with a notification that it's been published. Thank you, everybody, for joining today.